Oh, yeah, going off the camera.
So now
It's okay.
we had a mishap with the camera. So,
No problem.
no problem. Yeah.
Can anybody tell me what's going on? Tell me what's going on. If you open your eyes, you'll see that something is wrong.
Somebody's saying thanks, Bobby and Paul, for somebody appreciating our videos and what we have to say. All this is happening in our world today as a clear indicator that we are in danger. But I guess it's at the bottom of the list after all the different freedom movements. There is so much talk of climate change. The planet is dying while we see that society is dying, but no one cares. Mothers are murderers, children are sex objects, men are now women, and women are no longer women. See, this person makes an interesting comment, Paul. There's so much concern, and rightly so, about climate change and about the damage we could be doing to the environment. But there's very little concern about how this loss of morality and the embracing of things that are harmful and dangerous, how that's destroying the fabric of society, how that's destroying individual lives, how that's destroying values, morality. And so we're concerned about saving the planet from physical dangers, from a changing climate, but we're not concerned about how shifting values are adversely affecting society.
So Bobby, if I'll ask a question, maybe someone will not, for example, the woke people will say, how does my walking around naked affect you? How does my being gay affect you? How does my, being promiscuous or dressing half naked, how does it affect you? So maybe can you come up with, pointers to what could actually be the mass impact of this degeneration?
Yeah. I think all you have to do is look at the United States and you can see what the mass impact is. Because one of the things that started out, say, in the 1960s and 1970s was people talked about the sexual revolution. What could be the harm of having sexual freedom? But then we saw how it led to the destruction of families. It led to all kinds of diseases. It led to higher divorce rates. It led, this whole idea of freedom, I can do what I want, led to the destruction of the nuclear family. And so now you have the single motherhood epidemic. Now you have people who are not building trusting relationships with a partner for life and building a family that's there permanently to provide a stable environment to raise children up into. It's kind of like the same thing people talked about. What was the harm of removing prayer from public schools in the United States in the 1960s? What's the harm in that? Well, the harm in that is what happened is now you have students who are being educated within a secular society who embrace secular values and then take those into the world, and everything else becomes secularized, and then people become more distant from God, more distant from morality, more distant from an awareness of what is right and wrong, and then they begin to embrace values that are harmful, such as girls putting themselves out there on the internet in ways that are sexual and that are opening doors to men who are not their friends, who are looking at them in ways they shouldn't be, and then also in the long run jeopardizing their chances of actually having a happy marriage with a man because they're engaging in behaviors that would cause a man who's really looking for a serious permanent relationship and marriage to not want to be with them. For example, if they engage in loose sexual behavior at young ages, say in their 20s, and suddenly they think, well, I'll do this now because I want to, but when I'm older, I'll be able to find a man. But by the time they get to that point, because of the way that they've been living, a man wants a stable woman who's going to commit to him, not somebody who's willing to go from man to man or be loose and promiscuous.
Okay, thank you, Bobby. So basically, to add to what Bobby has said, we're going to have a society where people are having loose, intimate relationships, and these loose, intimate relationships are not just about the emotional, even without looking at the emotional trauma that is going to come out of them, because eventually sex is not just a physical bond, there's an emotional bond to it. Later on a spiritual bond for those who are more religious. But then you find that you're going to have children born out of wedlock or out of the family, out of an unorganized family. So these children are going to be raised well because parents are apart and they're fighting. So these children are going to grow up in an unsafe space where they are not being nurtured well, where they are probably traumatized by the fights between mommy and daddy, or there is not enough resources given that this lady is now having a single mother or there's a single father in a big shop. So we don't have a concerted effort, or the children don't have the benefit of growing up with two parents in the same family, and it's also these children, since they're not raised properly in a proper stable family, the chances that these children, and they're raised in a work community or a promiscuous community, the chances that these children end up doing crime are high. Spaces which have poverty, children who have grown up in lack, the chances that these children become pickpockets are high. The chances that these children have no conscience about keep taking someone's life away are high. So if a child has grown up in an unstable family, they're not raised well, that's why we see high crime rates. Especially if you look at communities like in the urban setting, you go to the ghettos, that's where the high crime rate is, because that's where the most promiscuous people stay. People who have no values, no morals, and no conscience because of the damning conditions they're growing up in, they have higher crime rate there because survival is also a pain, So you find that when these values are degenerated, the ripple effect is always going to come back up, from down to up. Eventually you find that these children raised in this kind of society are the ones in prison. They're the ones disrespecting women. They're the ones who are stealing. They're the ones who are doing all these kind of things. So you could say, no, it's my freedom to sleep with whoever I want, but eventually when you have babies and you can't take care of them, you become a societal burden. Something like that. So we could go on and on about what would go wrong when the society chooses to be promiscuous, but that's just a sneak peek in what could actually go wrong, among other things.
Yeah. So some interesting thoughts and comments here. This person goes on to say, finishing the rest of the quote, we can't have our cake and eat it too. And that's essentially what society wants to do. Society thinks that they can do whatever they want, live however they want, without consequences. You're going to have your cake. I want cake, but I want to eat it too. I don't want to share it with you, kind of thing.
You can't, it's like you can't eat your cake and still have it.
Yeah, okay, that's right. I never understood that kind of.
Yeah, so like when you have your cake and you eat it, then you don't have it anymore.
You don't have it anymore. Now
So
it makes sense. I never understood
exactly,
that.
that's the whole point.
Yeah, but I know what the quote means. I just never understood. I never really got it before.
That is, so you can't eat your cake and still have it.
But you
the
can't.
moment you eat it, you don't have it anymore. So for example, like when you lose your virginity, you don't have virginity anymore.
That's true. You never get it back.
When you sleep with 10 men, your body count is 10. It will never be 9.
Yep.
You get?
Right.
And you when you get in a relationship with someone, your exes will always, in a one way or the other, they will always show up.
Yeah, they will, and that's what a lot of men don't want when they talk about women who have high body counts.
Exactly.
Because there's some sort of emotional connection that women develop with all those men, and she's going to do comparisons.
Exactly, and then the men will struggle with this comparison.
Yes, they will. Because men have something called ego.
Yeah, exactly. So you're going to have 9 egos in your heart, or 10 men because of the men you've slept with, and then you're with this gentleman and he's now having to compete with those people, those men in your head.
And I'm not condoning men sleeping with multiple women either. Neither one of us is doing
Neither
that.
is right.
Yeah, so we're not condoning, we're not just trying to pick on the women here. If we subscribe to traditional values, then you're not going to have
multiple.
You're not, whether you're a man or a woman, you're not going to be sleeping with multiple people.
Yeah.
But of course, you talked about before how this whole woke culture has kind of led to this of, you have women competing for the top tier of men because the woke culture tells them they're worthy of the top tier of men. Because you go and you ask women, like, on a scale of 1 to 10, are you a 1 or a 10? on a scale of 1 to 10,
Yeah, I know that.
they're almost always going to say, I'm a 10 and I deserve the best.
Every woman is perfect.
And everyone, yeah.
She has it all.
But the problem is, you're all competing for a small sample of men that you think that you deserve.
Exactly.
And then what those men do who are at the top tier is they end up sleeping with multiple women.
And the eventual heartbreaks and emotional
Yes.
trauma will come out. Yeah.
And it's not healthy either for the men or for the women. And what we're calling for is for people to rise above this, to say no to this, to reject the values of radical feminism and of modern woke culture. Again, not classic feminism. We've talked about this before. We do believe in equal opportunities for women. But we're talking about the radical feminism that is dominant today. Reject it, run from it, walk away from it.
And ironically about feminists, usually the very strong feminists who are leading people astray, you know, they are bitter people who are single mothers or who have divorced, or they are basically bitter people. Either they were raised in a single family, or they have been divorced, or they've been hurt by one man out there. And they are misleading other people because of their own emotional traumas, you know. But also some of these feminists, some of them, they can come out and tell all this very trashy thing about men, but then some of them are actually comfortably traditional women in their home. Yeah. And they're misleading the young girls.
So, and actually there's still more to this comment to talk about. This person goes on to say, we have spent this past decade living in our feelings. And we've talked about this before too.
Yeah.
We've lost this kind of sense of rationality and logic, that if you try to bring logic into things, then you're called whatever name they want to call you for daring to talk about things logically. That even to talk about things logically can be considered misogynistic or bigoted or hateful or hate speech. Because it's all based on emotions and how you feel, and reality is determined by what you feel. What I feel that I am, that's what I am. That's how we've been living in society for the last decade. So if you're a male but you feel like a woman, you're a woman because you feel like one. Even though biologically, everything is screaming logically, scientifically, physically, everything is screaming that you're a man.
Well, for me, I would advise that when you feel like whatever your feelings are telling you this at one point, and they're strange to objective reality, you need help. And it's okay to feel things that are not right.
Right. It's not a bad thing to need help. It's not an insult.
Yes,
need help. We all need help. We all need help sometimes, right? You know?
There are times when you feel like, I feel like committing suicide. Does that justify that suicide is right? Maybe not. You know? So when you feel something, it doesn't mean it's the right thing. It's just what you feel.
It's just what you feel.
So sometimes what you feel could be damaging, and that's why sometimes when you feel something that is outside objective reality, just seek help, seek counsel, talk to some other person, and don't just run to the work. People are just going to validate or affirm whatever negative feelings you're having. Go to someone, you know, more objective, someone more open-minded. And even the word open-minded has lost value, because nowadays open-minded means being woke.
Because a lot of times what happens with these woke people that give counsel and quote-unquote help and care, we've talked about this before, this whole issue of gender-affirming care, where you will actually transition children, where they actually transition children with irreversible procedures that if later in life they regret the decision and this happens, they can't go back. And they've done damage to themselves for life. And they've even, with this gender-affirming care, which basically doing things to change sex, you've done things on such a level that it can't be reversed. You've eliminated that person's ability to reproduce. And so what you've done is so for temporary relief of their emotions, you damage them in the long term in ways they're going to regret later.
Some of them are even getting cancer out of this gender-affirming care.
They're getting what? Say that again?
Cancer.
Yeah. And then the thing is, these procedures, because these procedures aren't safe.
Yeah.
And there's also cases of people, getting artificial vaginas put in And then, because it's not natural, the vagina wants to close back in, and so they can also have problems with infections, and they have to have treatments for the rest of their lives. You know, because...
So just because of how someone feels, you condemn them to treatment or medication all their life, just because of how they felt in a particular moment, in a particular season of their life, when they could have actually been corrected.
Yes. By
getting appropriate help to actually straighten their feeling, which has gone avast.
Yeah. So, thank you, Woke Crowd, for everything. Sarcastic. Yeah. So, continuing the last part of this comment, we are in danger. There needs to be a red line that we don't cross. And unfortunately, Paul, I think, at least in America, we've crossed it. And in Uganda, I don't think you've crossed it yet.
Well, we're crossing it for, especially from the elite. The elite are crossing it. But the other friend, she's elite a bit. She's high up there, and she says for her, when she gets children, she has accepted that kind of open-mindedness, which is toxic.
But the implication in that is if you don't accept it, she's suggesting that the people that don't accept it don't love their children, which just simply isn't true.
Yeah.
Because you love your children enough that you want the best for them.
So the work have indoctrinated the world to the point that when someone is being objectively real, they are not good. They are bad people, or they are dictators, or they are they are hateful, they are bigotry, they are etc. whatever.
Right. Kind of like what the Bible says about calling evil good and good evil. That your society erodes to such a degree that you start to call the things that are evil good, and you start to call the things that are good evil. And that's what we're seeing with the world culture. So
it's funny how when I was in high school, bad meant good. Like, oh man, this food is bad. It means the food is good.
Bad, it's bad.
This is bad, man. So bad really means good. And so now the impact, actually I see the impact of, so those are very subtle, subtle linguistic changes or influences to how the mind thinks. But then they bring it to as a child, they teach you that bad is good. Eventually you reach a point where there's no bad. Everything is good. Good is good, bad is good.
Right.
No problem. So that's a permissive society, and that's very painful, and that's a punishment society.
Yeah.
Or else to think like that.